Welcome back to another episode of The Hook by Adventures in Americana. I'm Christine Davis, and today I'm excited to be joined by Minneapolis singer-songwriter Josh Cleveland, who makes music that lives somewhere between soul, folk rock, rhythm, and blues. His commanding voice may lead the way, but on his new album, Prove the Sound, it is surrounded by the sound of a full band discovering what it can do together. The new record is Cleveland's first full length release since 2014's Root of a Man, and it feels less like a return than an arrival of something newly built. Josh Cleveland, welcome to The Hook.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, you've described yourself as the literal son of a preacher man. Can you talk a little bit about your upbringing, and does it come with certain expectations of what a singer should or should not sing about?
Oh yeah, great question. Yeah, so I grew up. My dad, my whole childhood was a preacher. He was born and raised in Alabama, and then came up to the north to start a church with some other families. And yeah, there was definitely that sense of, I guess, expectation as a preacher's kid, or PK, as they say in the biz. Yeah, to hold up a certain standard and that sort of thing. But it was so interesting. My dad was just this anomaly because he really, like, though he would we were in an a cappella church, so there wasn't any instrumental music. So we just sang, these a cappella hymns and stuff like that. But when it came to being at home with my dad, and you look at his like record collection, it would be like the Eagles and Led Zeppelin and like Aerosmith, and these different bands, like a little bit of Ray Charles and Jim Croce. So it was just that stuff in and of itself was not Christian or whatever. So it was more so I would watch my dad be moved by music and realize that it didn't have to always have, I guess, a certain leaning necessarily, like in a religious way. It just, if it connected to the human spirit and the human condition, I think that's what I learned right off the bat, is that music transcended so many different things to just human connection. And that, I think my mom would probably disagree a little bit. She's like, well, there's only a few things that you should maybe sing about, and maybe don't sing about those other ones. That's not how my mom sounds. but um, but I think for the most part, there was just really this sense of, if a human connects to it, it's worth singing, it's worth making.
So, when you began making your own music, you started out as a drummer, and even your quieter songs have a strong sense of momentum. When you write, are you secretly still a drummer, thinking about where a song needs to land before you think about what it needs to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of tongue in cheek, I feel a song with my hips first and then my heart. And it's hard to get that rhythm out. And our drummer Eric Smith, he is so intuitive, and um he's not afraid to just to go a little left to feel, left to center from time to time, just to kind of try something out. And more often than not, he's right in where he goes. And more often than not, we're on that same page. So as I'm writing stuff, it really it feels, I need to find that rhythm first. And we started it with this new album, Prove the Sound. Yeah, they're not like drivey high tempo tunes, but we call it energy at tempo.
Prove the Sound, the album moves among soul, folk rock, R&B, and rock without settling completely into any of them. Do you feel the style of a song as you're writing it, or are you responding to the other musicians when you go to rehearse or record?
Yeah, I think I feel the style of a song kind of as I'm writing it. I don't necessarily sit down and say, all right, now I'm going to write, kind of in this vein. I think the soul piece is just woven into my DNA. I think any song kind of has a natural propensity to go there. But then when I bring it to the band, I have to do a little bit of discipline on myself, just to say, okay, here's what we've talked about as a band a lot is, what's the yard of the song? Show me where the fence posts are so that I can color within that. Like, because otherwise we've definitely written songs where I've not told them, hey, here are kind of the parameters where I think this song is going to be or should at least stay. And then all of a sudden we write a song that's just like, it's a country tune, which is fine. Country music is great, but it's not something that I do well or care to like dive into. But we definitely did that without knowing those where those fence posts are. And so when I get to uh, a rehearsal, I try to do a better job of saying, hey, here's the yard, but then be open to, they may go to a corner of the yard that I was never intending to go. But if it serves the tune, then I have to be open to, ooh, that went a better place than I ever would have thought to take it.
The album contains titles like Reasons, Prove the Sound, Keep Singing, and Can't Hold On, or Anymore Can't Hold On. Something that like stages of an argument, maybe? Did the sequencing of the record reveal a story you hadn't consciously written?
Yeah, it did. Once we put the tunes like next to each other, we as a band just kind of sat down and we all had I had a spreadsheet of, okay, if you had to put these songs in order, what would they be? And then kind of like if there's any reasoning behind it, let me know. And we were fairly close, all five of us, on kind of the order that we were going to put them in. And once we had that order, it was fun to kind of look at the unintended narrative. And I think a big part of it, the whole album, was just the sense of how can I connect deeper to the stories that are around me? And how can I then make sure that I'm connecting to myself, then connecting to those stories, and then connecting to just kind of the greater story that we all kind of live in. And so it really became, a little bit of a tug and like push pull sort of relationship. Some of the songs you kind of feel, oh, whoever the creator is further along in their journey towards like that connection, or sometimes it's like, oh, this may have been kind of on the cusp. And it's sort of interesting. The song Anymore Can't Hold On was the last song we wrote on the album, but it's also one of those, like, it could have been the first song that we put on the album because it is a very like, I'm done with this part of my life and I need to move forward now. And then the album becomes that forward. But I think it kind of, when I look at it now in the song order, it looks a little bit more like maybe that there was just a last minute reflection on where they've been, and now let's move forward to the next.
I read that the song Magenta Queen started as a quick prompt to use the word magenta in a song. It makes me think of that Brian Eno, Peter Schmidt Oblique Strategies project. How does writing from a single prompt differ from beginning with a more fully formed idea?
Yeah, it really, I thought it would, I was kind of scared, honestly, to do it. It's the first time I've ever done a one word prompt song. But just the idea of just looking at, okay, this is one word, but what's there? What's in that space? And it was very quick where I just looked at the paint itself, or the color itself. And my one of my brothers is an art teacher. And we were just talking about a few different things, and I brought up this prompt. I was like, hey, I have this prompt that is a color. And he's like, oh, well, it's kind of, if you break it down, it's, a mixture of red and blue, like at its royal kind of basis. And it just like hit me of like, it's an in between. It's an in between color. And there was just something about that that just then opened up this freedom to write whatever I want, wherever that prompt is. The point is to write a song. So wherever that prompt takes you, sometimes it's super connected, sometimes it's not. This one was absolutely connected, which is why I kept Magenta as the title, but then put the queen in there. But yeah, it was more freeing than I thought it would be.
So some of these songs were developed over several years. Were any of them completely altered, where nearly every original part was replaced, but somehow it remained the same song?
Yeah, the closest one to that was Keep Singing. Our guitarist Dustin and I wrote it and then I brought it to him. We used to do this thing on his birthday where he just wanted to write a song. So we'd both take the day off of work and I'd go over to his house and we'd just write something. So I went over one day and we were working on this tune. And I liked it. The whole reason I wrote it was I wanted to have a tune that just had like a really driving feel, like a force to kind of be reckoned with feel to it. But the words, I just kind of put them in as filler at first, but then Dustin and I just sort of went with it. And then we brought it to the band and then we just started playing it. And by the time we got to the studio, I hated that song so much. I I didn't enjoy playing it. But the producers saw something in it. But when we got to the studio, one of the producers, Christopher First, pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, when you play this song, I don't feel like you actually believe it matters." And he was right. I didn't. I wasn't connected to it. And we ended up when we got to do the vocals towards the tail end, and I heard what they did with the tune. They Frankenstein that tune. I mean, they took out, I think there's two full parts that are no longer in that song. And then it just became a complete lyric rewrite. In the studio as we were doing the words, I started singing the other words. He goes, "Nah, you know what? Let's take. Why don't you take the night and let's just think about something else?" And so it was just this complete. I mean, and we. It was so weird then before our album release show to relearn this song that we wrote, but did we? And it was a very fun, but also kind of nerve wracking. Like, are we gonna connect to this tune? But it's now one of my favorite songs on the record.
Is there a moment on the album that sounds accidental but was actually meticulously planned, or the opposite, one that sounds meticulously planned but was actually a complete accident?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think with "Prove the Sound," um, we we ended up looping a drum part, which is just our drummer sitting on the floor playing a bass drum with his hands. But we got into the studio that day. We'd had a tough day before. We ended up scrapping a tune completely, just not even putting it on the record because it didn't feel right. And then we started working on Anymore and realized this song also is not working. And so we just left dejected. So when we came back in, we were going to start working on Prove the Sound, and our producers just said, like, "Hey, let's just, you know, grab the upright bass, you know, grab this little kick drum, and let's just play it here in the control room and just kind of walk us through the tune again. Let's just like bring ourselves back to the project." And the way that Eric was just kind of playing on the drum, we are like, "Ooh, let's let's just loop that." And so we did. He went into the room and just we looped that, and that was not something we were planning on doing. And it is like kind of the linchpin to the whole tune. And then Nikki Lemire, who plays harp on that tune, she brought her harp kind of begrudgingly. We are like, "Just bring it. Maybe we'll use it. Maybe we won't." And her part just was like, it was almost a one take sort of thing. She's like, "I don't know, maybe something like this," and she just played this beautiful part that just sort of ended. So between the drums, just the loop of the kick drum with his Eric's hands, and then Nikki's harp part, it was just kind of like oh, yep, and we'll just go ahead and keep that.
What's something that musicians routinely notice in your songs that ordinary listeners probably never would?
Hmm. I think at least what I've heard from a few musician friends, it's just the intentionality of the pieces and how they fit together, which I take a lot of pride in. I think that's if I were to break down kind of my purpose or my reason to being, it's about intention. Um, and to hear people say that, I think that's something that we've gotten some feedback from other musicians, just the like those small little things where you're like, that's just one note, but you would miss it if it wasn't there. And I think it's just the intentionality of the instrumentation or a harmony here, but not here. And just being really intentional with how we craft the different parts of the tune.
I love the song Birmingham. What energy can you put into a place song that might be more difficult to express in, say, like a name song or another topic?
Yeah, I think it's, when you think about a place, it's made up by so many people and so much culture and history maybe that a town or a place is proud of, maybe it's history that they're not proud of, right? And the conflict there. And so as I was writing this song, it's really kind of an homage to just where my dad grew up and going there on Christmases and holidays and visiting my family that was really hard to understand at first just because the accent was so thick. And then by the end, I would come home and my friends would be like, why are you talking like that? Um, but it was also, especially in Birmingham or a place in the South, there's just some history there that my struggle was, are people going to actually connect with what I'm saying about it and what I'm communicating, or are they going to put their own connotation into hearing something like Birmingham and thinking, ooh, there's some stuff there. uh and so I think there's always that challenge, but then it's also just, again, it comes down to intention and just good faith in what I'm recording. And hopefully if people give it a chance, they'll hear what the intention is behind the tune as opposed to maybe some of the negative stuff that might be there. But there's a part of me that I always love, especially if there's something tough about a history of a place, for that to also sort of be in there, because there's beauty in every place, even in the darkest, even in the worst, even in the toughest histories. There's still beauty in the recognition of what it was and what it maybe could be.
You had a brief stint on The Voice, where a vocal coach taught you how to strengthen your voice when you weren't singing. What does a singer do to train without actually singing? And did the show change anything about the way you use your voice now?
Yeah, boy, what an experience it was. Hands down, I think it was one of the most illuminating experiences as a musician that I've ever had. And this coach, Birdie was her name. Um, she just taught me the strength of breath, which I taught myself how to sing. I learned, like I said, growing up in an a cappella church. My dad loved singing, so we would sing together often. But I never learned how to breathe properly, and what that can do to save your voice, what it can do to actually hold texture. Even I'm a big belter. I like to hit that high note or that big note and just hold it for maybe a little too long. Uh, but I never quite learned until this experience the nuance of texture, and that you can emote, but a lot of that emoting comes from how you breathe. And I didn't know that. And so learning from Birdie to just breathe first. Like there was, I think it was my first two voice lessons with her. We didn't sing a note. It was just breathing. She just taught me how to stand and breathe, how to sit and breathe. Um, and then it was almost like acting. She was like, all right, now breathe like you're super tired, like you just ran this, or like now breathe like you're super excited, and starting to feel the difference in my body of excited breathing or tired breathing or anger breathing, or like being, she called it Twitter pated, like feeling like I was like in love, breathing or whatever. It just taught me a ton. So, and it also, a byproduct was it centered me on stage. And it's something that my wife always says before I go off to go do a sound check and go do a show. She's like, don't forget to breathe. And really it's what she's saying is just take that moment to recenter. And so all of that has definitely influenced. I step on a stage now and I'm just excited every single time, because it feels like home. And I think because I can I can breathe there and I can feel connected. And I know that if I feel connected to what I'm doing, the band's going to feel connected. We're going to feel connected. And then more than likely, the audience is going to then feel that and be connected to what we're doing. And it all starts at how we breathe.
So we briefly talked about it already, but the final track Anymore, Can't Hold On, in parentheses, is a live recording, while the rest of the album was polished in the studio. Why did you want to end the record that way?
I think it was we were at the end of the session, and Anymore was a song that we also brought into the studio, and we had a whole another part to it. Like it was going to go on even longer and get into a full, it was going to start off acoustic and then get into this big full band sort of crescendo sort of thing. But we kind of did that with Prove the Sound, even though it doesn't start off acoustic, but it starts off very quiet and understated and then ends kind of with this big crescendo moment. As we were talking with the producers, they really just said, I think this song needs to end right here. And I feel like it just needs to be you and your voice, and that's it. And so then they just, in the studio where we're at, there was just this little garage area and where all of our cases were and stuff, and some weird other like car parts and pedal parts. And they just set up a live mic and they said, we're gonna just leave you here. And I couldn't see them. They went back into the control room. I couldn't see them. I couldn't hear them. So I couldn't even know if they were like, hey, yeah, that take was good, or maybe do another take. They just said, do like 3 takes and then come check in with us. And so I just felt isolated, which was perfect for the tune. The tune is the theme is just kind of this person who realizes they're in this relationship, this place where they've been isolated for longer than they quite realize. And they're like kind of coming into that. But it just seemed like it needed to be raw. And that was totally on our producers. They just said, I just get in there, feel it, and just play when you're ready. And it just became this thing where we thought, one, it was also a little departure from the other tunes, but it felt like it would be a nice sort of like come down moment, just to kind of end the album, like a little sort of like sending off emotionally, if you will.
What do you hope your listeners take away from this new album, Prove the Sound?
Heavens. Didn't expect to really feel this the way that I am. Great question. I think when someone listens to these songs, I hope that they feel and believe that they are more capable than they think, and that they are connected to something bigger constantly. I think sometimes our lives can feel so small, when we're in crisis, or when we just feel a sense of loneliness, kind of at our core. It can make our world seem super small, and that we have like a smaller connection, a smaller footprint. And so I hope when they hear these songs that they connect to something that's bigger than themselves, but that they are so strongly and intentionally connected to, and that it's just always there. And then hopefully from that they know that they are more than capable to take that next step, or to take that next leap, or to make that new reach or connection that's out there.
Josh Cleveland's phenomenal new album, Prove the Sound, is out now wherever you get your music. You can find out more about Josh and his upcoming performances, including one on Friday, September 4th at the Minnesota State Fair, at joshcleveland.com. Josh, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks for having me.